Hello, Simple Plan community, all you financial warriors and those who are looking for financial peace of mind. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brad Macbeth. It's great to be with you. Today, we are going to get right down to it. We're going to be looking at that interesting question of why should I look at using a financial advisor, or should I look at using a financial advisor? Now, you might think I'm biased on that topic, but because of course I am a financial advisor and have been doing that for 18 years. I don't necessarily think that you must have a financial advisor. But we're going to look at the ins and outs of what benefits one might bring, and you can decide for yourself what you want to do. We help lots of folks. We have lots of tools that we hand out freely for people to use that help those who are do-it-yourselfers. So let's get right down to it. One of the things that I thought about when I was putting this together was what a beautiful city I live in. It's summer, it's gorgeous, and this is what it looks like a lot of the time in the summer. And we can go for weeks and weeks and weeks with sun and no rain and hot temperatures and all that. However, this is what it looks like right now. Same city, pretty much the same view, except we're shrouded in smoke. We're surrounded by forest fires. We're not in any danger here, but there have been communities that have burned down, and it's pretty crazy. So the reason I bring that up is because when we think of managing our own financial plan, our own finances, this is kind of the view that we think of, that, when things are clear and simple and easy and beautiful, I can make good decisions. But one of the things that a financial advisor will help you do is see through the fog and the smoke and the difficulties that come and go, because they certainly do come. But I really want to share with you what the difference is and what some of the hard research has shown, not just opinion, but actual hard research has shown about what happens for those who work with an advisor. And so there are proven benefits. There have been many studies done. And there are proven benefits. Those who use a financial advisor have a greater savings discipline. They have higher trust and confidence about their finances, and we're going to look at some numbers on that. They have an increased understanding of their finances, and they have reduced stress and anxiety. And really, at the core of it, these are the great things that you really want to be doing, whatever you're doing, whether you're doing it as a do-it-yourselfer or whether you're using an advisor. These are your goals, right? You want to have a great discipline. You want to have confidence and trust. You want to have understanding of your finances, and you really want to be free from financial anxiety, because financial stress and anxiety are plaguing our part of the world right now. But that's substantially because people are not doing very well with their money, and they know that inherently, but they don't really know what it's about, and so they just have this kind of inner anxiety about it. People who receive financial advice, again, this is statistically shown. I've got the background reports to share if you're interested. By all means, feel free to drop me a message. I'd be happy to share them with you. But people who receive financial advice accumulate more financial wealth, and we're going to look at what those numbers are. They're better protected financially, so greater financial security, better prepared for retirement and unexpected events. And I think we all know pretty well now that we live in a world with many unexpected events. Who knew that we were going to have to plan for a global pandemic that would go on for we don't know how long? So people who receive financial advice have all these benefits over and above most of those people who don't receive advice. That's from the study that Advocates did, surveying many financial or many families about their finances. So let's take a look. I'm going to tell you that at the heart of the difference in working with a financial advisor is a comprehensive financial plan. And I want to tell you a bit about what a comprehensive financial plan contains. But first, let me say this, that if you're working with an advisor, you're paying them one way or another, whether they're getting a commission from the assets they have under management that are yours. So if you've got investments, they're maybe getting, as much as 1 percentage point of that every year, maybe less. But they're getting paid. And so if they're getting paid, you should be clear, and this above all else, you should be clear on what you should be getting for your money and that you're actually getting it. So here's what's in a comprehensive financial plan. And I would say that if you have an advisor, you should have a financial plan. And if you don't, you should get another advisor who will give you a financial plan, because otherwise they're just salesmen. So a comprehensive financial plan seeks to plan for all areas of your financial life, including your income, your expenses, your investments and debt, and your short and long-term goals, such as paying for college or retiring comfortably, going on vacations that cost a lot of money, buying cars, those types of things. But it also focuses on your taxes and other financial risks, such as disability and death. And finally, leaving a legacy and how you're going to leave that legacy to ensure that it goes the way that you want it to go. That's what's part of a comprehensive financial plan. So let's take a quick look here. This little graph chart shows us the level of comfort or confidence that people have about their money. And so on the top here, we show that 49% of people who have a comprehensive plan are either very confident or extremely confident about their finances. So let me pause there and ask you this. We've been through a lot over the last year and a half, really, with the COVID pandemic. And it's put a lot of pressure on people, on families, on people's finances. How have you felt throughout that process about your money? Have you been feeling either very or extremely confident? Or are you more in the fairly or the somewhat confident or not at all confident about your money? We know that there are many, many people who are surviving only on government largesse. And I'm not criticizing that. We're in an unprecedented global event that's causing some great disruption. But how did you feel about that, and how are you managing? Was it something that put a lot of pressure on your finances and your family situation, or was it just something that you had to manage around? So for those who are supported by advice, that means they get advice here and there. They get professional advice, but they don't have a comprehensive plan, and maybe they don't have an ongoing relationship with an advisor. Those folks are 30% either very or extremely confident about their money. And then for those who are self-directed, which I'm going to assume also includes those who don't give it any thought, only 25% of those are either very or extremely confident. So twice as many people who have a comprehensive financial plan are very or extremely confident about their money compared with those who are either doing it themselves or not doing it at all. But here's where the rubber really hits the road, because this is what most people think about. What is the growth in financial assets? So your investments, your net worth, let's put it that way, over time for households that receive advice compared to those that don't get advice. So here's the numbers. For those that work with an advisor, their assets, now this is just broad, right? So this is not an individual, this is broad research over large groups. Those that work with an advisor and get advice, after 4 to 6 years, have about 1.6 times as much accumulated as those who don't get advice. After 7 to 14 years, they have twice as much as those who don't get advice. And after 14 years, they have nearly 2.7 times as much accumulated as those who don't get advice. So these are the concrete benefits of working with an advisor. The peace of mind, as well as the actual growth in assets. Now, of course, the peace of mind and just the general feeling of well-being that goes with that about your money also brings peace into your household. It brings confidence in your family. And it's just a great way to live. Now, I wanted to show you just, okay, it's easy to talk about this stuff, and we've looked at, well, what is a comprehensive financial plan? What does that mean? And again, I want to reiterate, if you don't have one and you are working with some form of advisor, then I would at the very least be demanding of that advisor, why don't I have a financial plan? And I'll tell you why that is for most advisors. It's because a lot of advisors just don't work that way, because it takes time. It takes a lot of effort to work through a financial plan, and then it takes a lot of effort to convey what that plan is about to a client. And so a lot of advisors just skip that part and just skip to the, okay, well, let's get you some investments. Well, I'm going to show you what's inside a financial plan, and you can see for yourself why that's not a very good approach to things. So let's have a look here. All right, so this is a financial plan. It's created for a sample client. This is not a real person's information, but it is the financial plan that the type of approach that we use. And this is relatively simplified. Some of you may have seen financial plans before that get to be like 50 pages long, and they're completely incomprehensible. We try to keep things, it's why we call it the simple plan. We try to keep things simple as much as that can be achieved when we're working with so many important areas of our life. So let's take a look. So first we document our assumptions, which include things like, well, what do we think the rates of return are going to be? What do we think inflation's going to be like? And when are you planning on retiring? That kind of thing. And so then we take a snapshot of where you're at financially, and that's called your net worth. And by the way, your net worth is the number one measurement of your financial health and of your financial progress over time. Because your income can go up, but I certainly know just as many people who get themselves in trouble with big incomes as do with small incomes. Everybody's prone to overspending, outliving their lifestyle, getting into debt that they can't manage, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't matter whether they're making $20,000 or $200,000 or $2 million. It happens to many, many people. So net worth just shows, is basically, simply, it's what you own less what you owe. And so what you own, we'll see up here, is registered, non-registered, and tax-free savings account assets, real assets, which includes things like a home, maybe you have a business of some kind. And then you have your liabilities, whatever debts you owe, and that gives us your net worth. And this chart here breaks down, in pretty colors what it's all about. We also look at what's your after-tax spending going to be kind of over the course of your life. Now this example here is a little unbalanced because they're saving aggressively, so they're actually living a modest lifestyle during their working years, and then when they get here to retirement, they actually have a lot of money accumulated, so they're living better. That doesn't have to be the way you do it, but the most important question is, what's your after-tax spending? That is, how much do you have to spend today? And when you reach retirement, how much you're going to have to spend in retirement after you pay taxes. And we'll see why that's an important consideration in a moment. We look at sources of income. So this is just a typical Canadian. So their income pre-retirement is coming in the form of employment income, that is earning money through job that they have, and then they're spending that money in retirement, and it shows us where are we getting that money from. Now in this case they've put most of their money into a tax-free savings account, so that's where it's accumulated, but you may well have an RSP and that kind of thing as well. And so one of the things that's crucial is we need to be thinking greatly about what we're going to do in this part of our lives. What is that, which is sometimes called the decumulation phase, where you take the money, because all retirement is you're shifting from living off the money that you earn by working to living off the money that you generate from your assets, generally your savings. So that those savings could be in a pension, they could be in RSPs, TFSAs, lots of places. So once we switch to living off those assets, what really matters as well is what's the tax treatment of all those assets. And we don't get to make choices at that point, because the choice that we made about the tax treatment in retirement, we made here in the accumulation phase when we were putting money aside. So for example, if we put money into an RRSP, we're going to pay income tax on every penny that comes out of that RRSP in retirement. And that can be fine. An RRSP can be the right choice, and it is for many, many people. But it may not be the right choice for you. It's definitely not the right choice for all people. Tax-free savings account are an excellent choice, but there's not really enough space in a tax-free savings account to save completely and comprehensively for retirement. You can't put enough money in there for most people to accumulate enough to live completely off that in your retirement. So you need to make plans around that. And a big part of that is what's going to happen with the taxation. So let me just give you an example about one of the questions if you're going to put money into an RRSP. If you pass away and you have a large RRSP and you don't have a spouse, that money is going to be deregistered. It's going to be deemed to be deregistered on the date of your death. So for example, let's say you'd accumulated $500,000 in an RRSP and you pass away before you've had a chance to exhaust that. So there's $500,000 left in it. And on the day that you die, if you don't have a spouse that you can pass it on to, you are going to pay in the neighborhood of 50% income tax on that money. So your $500,000 is going to turn into $250,000. Now again, having an RRSP can be a fine idea, and maybe that's just a risk you have to plan for, but it's a real risk, and many, many people are not aware of it. They just kind of automatically think about, oh, I'm going to invest in an RRSP because that's what we've been trained to do. And they don't necessarily understand all the nuances. There's a lot of people putting money into an RRSP where it makes no sense at all. They're only making $30,000 or $40,000 a year. At that level, it doesn't make sense to put money into an RRSP. You're not getting enough benefit in the tax deduction that you receive compared to the tax liability you're going to have when you retire and have to take that money out. So that's just one aspect of a question, but you really have to be putting your money into an investment. You have to be starting out the way you intend to go. So if having an RRSP and the tax implications of that fit your comprehensive plan, then great. But you need to have the picture of what that means. All right, this is asset allocation. So this person's relatively young, so they're just 100% in equities. And we haven't adjusted for that in there. All right, so we saw the net worth chart earlier. This is just the net worth statement. Now remember, it is just a snapshot. And at this point, we see what this person owns, which is their tax-free savings account, their home, and what they owe, which they have a line of credit, like many Canadians do, and they have a mortgage. And so you take what they own, which is 468, no. Yes, you take what they own and then you subtract what they owe, and their net worth is $244,293. So one of the great things about having a comprehensive financial plan and working with an advisor is that next year, a year from now, maybe more frequently than that, you're going to get together and review the plan and update the plan. So you're going to be able to look at your net worth statement snapshot at that point, and it's going to tell you how you're doing. Your net worth should be going up. That's the objective. And we'll examine the projections. Well, we thought we were going to earn this much rate of return. How have we been doing? And do we need to make any adjustments? Now, I said, and then the next thing we want to know is, well, what are we planning on leaving behind? Because we all leave something behind, but we may want to be very intentional about that. And so we can look at how much we're going to leave as a legacy to pass along to others. And that's one of the big picture things to think about in life. And again, how that's going to work from a tax point of view. So let me give you another kind of a horror story from my business about estates and why having an advisor is important. There was a recent case of a man, and he was in a second marriage. His first marriage had ended in divorce. And he had accumulated much of his net worth over a long period of time in his RRSP. These were his retirement monies that he was planning to live on. So there was a lot accumulated in there. He died unexpectedly before he got to retirement. And when they dug into it, it turned out that he had initially set up this RRSP before he was married the second time, while he was still married to his first wife. And he named his first wife as the beneficiary of his RRSP. And it just never occurred to him that that was something that needed to be updated. And roll forward several decades, there's a lot of money in that RRSP now. He dies, and his ex-wife is still named as the beneficiary of that RRSP. Well, two very unfortunate things happened. And this got challenged in court, but there was nothing that could be done about it. The first thing that happened is all the money in his RRSP was cashed out and went to his ex-wife. There was just no way around that. He had named her as the beneficiary and never changed it. But the real insult to injury was that his RRSP being cashed out and passed along to someone who was not his spouse means that taxes were owing. And so 50% of the value of that RRSP, and I believe it was in the neighborhood of $500,000 total. So 50% of that value, $250,000, was the tax owing. And that tax bill goes to his estate. So not only did his ex-wife get the $500,000, but his estate now owed $250,000. So all his other assets that he had that were going to be passed on to his current wife and perhaps children, there was going to be $250,000 less to pass along. So this is what can happen when you're not working with an advisor. Now, honestly, that kind of stuff can happen when you're working with a sloppy advisor as well. But here's the good news. Advisors have errors and omissions insurance. And so if they do make a mistake like that, if they are negligent like that, and I would certainly call that negligence on an advisor's part if there was an advisor involved, you can go after the advisor to recover your loss from their errors and omissions insurance. And that kind of stuff goes on regularly. So now, let me reiterate. You can absolutely do all these things on your own, right? You just have to spend the time to know enough. So you have to understand all the ins and outs of all these tax laws and implications, both near term and long term. And you need to have the same perspective about investments. What's the right kind of investment for you? And all that body of knowledge that you get when you work with a good advisor. And you also need to be making your own plan, a comprehensive plan that you're going to follow and update regularly. And you're going to need to weather the storms so that when that smoke and fog blows in, you're going to be clear on what to do. You can absolutely do that on your own. I don't discourage people from doing it on their own. I just say it's a very big commitment because it's a large body of understanding you need to have in order to make wise choices for your finances. So another thing you get when we put together a comprehensive plan is a cash flow summary. And so that shows us where's the money going to come from exactly each step of the way through retirement. And so you'll see here, one of the purposes of our plan when we put it together is when the person reaches retirement. So see here at age 65, we are optimizing. We're optimizing for the amount of income that they can have in retirement throughout their retirement, because we want to ensure that they're not going to run out of money. Did you know that that's actually the number one money fear that Canadians have, that they will run out of money in retirement? So we want to make sure, do everything possible to ensure that When we retire, we're not going to run out of money. And that is a cornerstone of these types of plans. And so you'll see here, this person is going to have, in real dollars, that is today's dollars, 2021 dollars, they're going to have a retirement, an after-tax retirement income of $73,734. And you'll see that that looks like that continues every year. However, one of the things we do in our planning, of course, is to adjust for inflation. And so we know that based on our inflation assumption, which we looked at earlier, which I believe we were using 2.5%, that by the time they retire in the year 2050, they're going to not need $73,000, but they're going to need $150,000 to have the equivalent purchase power of having $73,000 today. And you'll see that the nominal dollars, which is the inflation-adjusted dollars that they're going to be living on, is going up every year, so that by the time they get to 77, they're going to need $200,000 to have the equivalent purchasing power of $73,000 today. So that's another component of a comprehensive financial plan. And that's it. That's what you get when you get a comprehensive financial plan, and it's one of the chief reasons to work with an advisor. So, and now one of the big objections that people have, and it's a reasonable objection, is the fees. All these fees. So there's a simple argument about that, and the argument is, well, it's not really about who's charging what, it's about what's the rate of return that you're getting over the long haul. That's the first question. And we saw the statistics on that. People who work with an advisor are accumulating more than people who don't. That's the real rate of return right there. But number two, you have to ask yourself, what am I paying for? And I absolutely believe this. What am I paying for when I'm working with an advisor? How much am I paying, and how am I paying for it? So the very traditional way of paying for an advisor is they get paid for the amount of assets that they have under management that you own. And they get paid a percentage point. It might be as high as 1%. Some even charge more than 1%. I would argue that that's an awful lot of money. But, others charge less, and often they charge less based on how much you have invested. So if you have more invested, they charge a lower percentage because we're not selling real estate here where when houses go from $400,000 to $1 million, we're still charging the same 3% or whatever, because now, it's costing $30,000 to sell your house instead of $12,000. That doesn't make any sense. So, for example, the way that we work, let me pause there. So people object to paying for advice or paying too much for advice. Fees are the highest in the world in Canada, whatever. And that's not true, but there's a lot of talk about that. But there is some reasonable talk, because let me tell you a couple of things. Having been in this business for 18 years, fees have come down, but there are still lots of fees out there that are not cheap. Some are running like in the 2.5% range for a particular mutual fund. Now, depending on the nature of the fund, that might be reasonable if it's a very complex fund that's very, very active with a lot of things going on. And it's yielding you a great rate of return. But a lot of funds, like your typical Canadian balanced fund, which is what most Canadians have, because they go to the bank and they get their advice over the counter, they're all the same. They all contain the same banks and railways and maybe energy companies and utilities and bonds and blah, blah, blah. They're really no different. And so there's really there's lots of activity going on, but there's not much to it. Just really not necessary. So if you're paying 2.5% for that, then you're paying too much. But what are you getting when you work with an advisor? So let's, for example, we work with folks, and we offer it whatever way you want. If people want to do a fee for service arrangement, that's great. And we lay that out for them. And honestly, I would argue that it's not really worth doing that unless you've got at least $500,000 that you're investing with us, because Lower than that, you're better. It's cheaper to just go with the assets under management approach. Because, for example, all the work that goes into putting together one of these plans, which requires, we're probably going to meet with you over, probably 3-4 hours, between getting to know you, you getting to know us, gathering a lot of information from you, going back and forth to get the details, and then finally presenting you with the plan and refining it to get it exactly how you want it. That's going to be at least 3 or 4 hours just of engagement with you, as well as the amount of time we're going to spend putting the plan together. And so we charge basic cost of $1,500 for that service. Now, that's just going to get you the plan. That means a year from now, if you want to review the plan and update it and all the rest of it, you're going to have to pay again. We're going to have to go through the whole process again. So, if you are someone that has, a higher amount of assets invested with us, then going fee for service can really make sense. But, and that's the same for everybody. That's not just us. But if you're working with an advisor who is diligent and serious and working on a comprehensive planning basis, then if they're doing it on an assets under management fee basis, you're probably getting some good value. So, for example, let's say we've got a new client, they have $50,000 in TFSA and RRSP and some money in an RESP. So now we're going to be actively managing 3 accounts for them. They've got a total of $50,000 in there. Well, if they were to pay just to get the financial plan done, $1,500, they would be paying 3% of their assets in order just to get the plan. Well, I would argue that's not worthwhile, or it's not affordable anyway. But what I would say is, listen, if we do it on an assets under management basis, our fee is we charge people 0.95%. And that works out to $475 a year. So for $475 in that first year, we're going to meet with them, do all that financial planning. They can ask us questions whenever they want to. We'll have other meetings throughout. We're going to explain everything to them. We're going to educate them on all the parts, the moving parts to their plan, and all of that good stuff. We're going to do all of that. And they're getting that for $475. So now for us, we look at that as an investment. Well, we look at it as a number of things. First off, we don't want to exclude anybody from being able to work with us. So it needs to be manageable and affordable for them. Number two, we know that things are going to grow. Their assets may be $50,000 today, but in another 5-10 years, they may well be $250,000. And, long term, and then at that point, somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000. Every year we have the conversation with them, how do you want to proceed on the fee basis? Do you want to do it fee for service or whatever? So it's entirely up to you. But that's the advantage to most Canadians. It really doesn't make sense for most Canadians to be getting comprehensive financial advice on a fee for service basis if they have less than a couple $100,000 in assets. It's just not going to work well for them financially. Now, maybe there are exceptions to that, but I haven't seen them. Now, there are definitely people who will produce you a quick and dirty, cheap, fast plan for less money, but then you're not getting all that stuff that's in that comprehensive plan. So let's just go back and remember where I started with this. When you're making your plan, when you're making your arrangements to run your own finances, this is how you're thinking about it, this is how you see it. But things move along. The global meltdown comes in 2008. Big hiccups come. Investments dropped in the neighborhood of 30% in the first 6 weeks of COVID coming to North America. It was pretty alarming. It was a huge drop. But you know what? It bounced right back. But that was some of that smoke and fog, and a lot of panic sets in. So we want to remember that we're working on that comprehensive financial plan. So you want to get the best plan. You need to know what's going on in all these aspects of your life. or you don't really have a great plan, because then, some part can come out of left field and knock over all your plans. So you want to have a comprehensive plan, and you want to be getting advice. Now, one of the places that you can join with us to get advice without even engaging with us is on Facebook. You just saw our Facebook handle up there. You can join with us in our community, the Simple Plan community. It's free to join. It's for people who want to get on top of their finances. And we offer lots of great stuff in there, including advice. We answer people's questions. We have tools that people can get at. And you can get to that facebook.com/groups/Simple Plan Community, or just go to Facebook and search for Simple Plan Community. So I hope this has helped you to see why you want to work with an advisor. If you do, maybe it's convinced you further that, listen, I'm on top of this stuff. I know enough. I can do it myself. And I truly believe you can. I believe you can do it yourself. It's never been easier. There's great tools out there. You just have to know what you're doing. And if you need some more understanding, you have to know where you're getting it. Because I'll tell you, one of the things I see that boggles my mind is I'm in a bunch of Facebook groups just offering advice in there. And what I see is people throwing out a question in a Facebook group and then getting answers from people, dozens of people in a Facebook group, some of which is verifiably technically wrong and will get them into trouble, but they don't know the difference, and people speak emphatically and they sound like they know what they're talking about. So don't go to Facebook groups to get your advice unless it's very clear that the place is being moderated and taken good care of, so that only correct answers are being offered. When you're making specific decisions about your finances, like should I put money in an RSP or a TFSA? If it's like, well, how much money should I be saving? What kind of return should I get? All these things that are a matter of, kind of debatability and opinion, then by all means. But make sure you're getting good and clear advice if you're taking advice. So whether you want to do it for yourself or whether you want to work with an advisor, and whether it's us or not, it doesn't matter. We welcome you to come into the Simple Plan community on Facebook. Just search for Simple Plan Community. I've really enjoyed being with you here today. I hope this is helpful. Feel free to send us questions. You can find us on the web as well at getthesimpleplan.com. Find us on Facebook there at Macbeth Group. Find us on Instagram and Twitter. Twitter at Cash Coach Canada, and on Instagram at Macbeth Group. Thanks very much. It's been great being with you, and we'll see you next week.